Hello, everybody. I am here with Jody Garcia, who is a Rockstar Realtor out in Georgetown, Texas, which is outside of Austin. And if you're one of the many people flocking to the great state of Texas, yes, call Jody. She is your girl. She will hook you up. I can guarantee that for sure. But we're talking today because Jody and I recently finished up working together for a year in my signature program where I work with people one-on-one, where we have coaching calls, and then I do energy work on them. And so Jody experienced a whole year of energy work, a lot of energy work, and us working together. So we just want to jump on just to share that experience, because I know, people, I could tell people how great it is to work with me, but It's always, different hearing somebody else's story. So Jody, thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
So what was life like for you before we started working together? What were the things that you were like, oh, I really need some help with?
So it's funny, I was reflecting about where I was a year ago, because it's funny, it happens gradually, so you don't always see it. But when I thought back to March of 2020, it was like the beginning of the pandemic. I was having financial stresses that was causing like huge contraction. And also I wasn't feeling super confident, whether it was personally, professionally, which I know in my mind is ridiculous, but you kind of sometimes obsess over the one thing you did wrong instead of all the things you do right. So that's kind of where I was. So I came in very deflated and took a giant step of faith, because I just knew that I needed one-on-one coaching again, because I haven't had one-on-one coaching since 2017. So you were the first person I re-entered that with.
Yeah. And what was it? So we were specifically working on like confidence, like having consistent success in your business, and being at a place where the external stuff didn't knock you down.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any, do you remember any specific things that when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, like that really was a big thing at the time, but now when I look at it, you're like, yeah, not really a big thing at all
now? Yes, I think, talking about not letting external forces knock you down. Like I just had a challenge this Friday where I came home in the afternoon. It's before 4th of July weekend. It's about 2:30. And my AC was not working. And I live in Texas, so it's hot as hell down here. And I was like, oh no, what's going on? So I immediately did a couple things to check on my end if it was something, if I could fix it, if it was a tripped breaker or some other things I knew about, and it wasn't. So got a repair person out here. Basically, it wasn't a great prognosis. And I immediately kind of had that, kind of like if your car breaks down or something like that, like you just get this feeling. And I went into a little bit of freak out and wanted to cry, but I was actually shocked at how quickly I kind of rebounded. And I just kept talking to the guy. We figured out like a temporary solution, so he could get my AC working, and we're going to address more of it later because certain parts were under warranty, just different aspects of it. And then I felt a little contraction about the money part of it because it's an unexpected expense. But then I immediately thought, I have the money to take care of it. I haven't had anything like this come up in a long time. It's going to be fine. But you just kind of initially go to that default setting mentally and emotionally, like you feel it in your body. So right. Yeah. Just all those things.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you said it, because a lot of times people, will come to coaching and they're like, because I don't want to feel these feelings anymore. Like, I want to just, no matter what happens in life, to always be happy. And I'm like, that's never going to happen. And that's really boring. Yeah. Like to be happy all the time it's like the Truman Show, he's like, wait a minute, like I want something more than this. The whole idea is to have the skills to be able to, when you feel those emotions, like I said, when you feel that contraction, to be able to move through it, to feel it in your body.
Yeah.
And let it be, and like, let it pass through you, and let the energy flow through you, but not let it control you.
Yes. Like I maybe got a little tear squeaked out. And then, then I just kind of did a reality check. All right, I've got money in the bank. I've got money in savings. I have good credit. I got credit card, like all the things. It's like, I'm not destitute. I can take care of it. Is it unexpected? Yes. Could I buy other things I would prefer to buy with that money? Yes. And this is part of living life. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So the big thing that I do differently than most coaches do is the energy work, right? And that for anybody who doesn't know the work that I do, we like most coaching is just we're talking about mindset stuff, and that's it. Where when I'm not on the phone with clients, I'm doing energy work on them multiple times a week, typically 2 to 4 times a week, where my clients get these voice memos saying, hey, we worked on whatever specific thing we were working on, whether it's body love, self-love, money blocks, I'm like, oh, this is what was released. So you heard from me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of voice messages from me. What do you think, what was your experience like with the energy work and like even just like wanting to have that as a part of your journey? And what was your experience like with it?
Well, I think, again, like with my journey that I've been on probably since 2015, 16, 17, like I think a lot of people know at this point that trauma can be stored in the body. Like there are things that manifest in our body from our emotions, our feelings, just all of that, especially if we don't learn how to, like when you talked about just a minute ago, let them pass through. Some people we hold on to them. And sometimes we deal with stuff so young, we weren't even equipped at that time. When you equipped until probably more recently to deal with stuff.
Yeah.
So I knew from Heather and I were in a coaching group together. I knew from seeing Heather do her work that this kind of definitely sparked interest for me because I was like, ooh, it's like an iceberg. I can work on this all day long, but what about the big part of it that's underneath the water? I need to deal with that big part underneath the water because there's stuff there. And, I do have traumatic elements to my childhood. I mean, just a lot of changing, parents divorcing, poverty, moving a lot, like just a lot of aspects like that, and you and I talked about some things. You're like, damn, that's some messed up stuff. Some of the things I had to deal with. And, so
I'm going to pause that though, because a lot of times we talk about our trauma and we're like, oh yeah, this and this and this happened. Right. And we don't ever acknowledge like, yeah, that is messed up stuff. And sometimes just to have somebody say that and be like, yeah, it is. And like to be seen and heard and acknowledged is a huge thing for it to be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's okay for me to talk about this. It's okay for me to realize that this did impact me more than I realized.
Yeah. So I think I knew that there were layers that needed to be addressed because one of my big things that I've always wanted to do since the divorce is I said, I don't want to be one of those people that you meet me 10, 15 years down the road and I'm still bitter and angry and talking about stuff like it just happened. I said, I want to be a different person in that regard. And so I've definitely been dealing on it and realizing that, I probably have a lot of old stuff like that I haven't dealt with. And so it was interesting to get your voice memos each week and to see the feelings that were released and even the stuff that was maybe passed down through my family. So that was fascinating as well to kind of start thinking about my mom and dad and elements of their lives that maybe have come through to mine. And then also thinking about how that affects my son. So there's just layers to all of it. So I like the practical, the logistic, but then I also like the mystic, which is it's science too. Like, it's just, I don't know, to me, it's fascinating because as I was reflecting, getting ready for this call, I thought about how different things are. And again, I didn't see it because it happened gradually, but I'm in a drastically different place now than I was a year ago.
Yeah,
for sure.
When you think about being a divorcee, okay, and thinking about your ex, how does it feel now compared to a year
ago? Very different because we've also had some interactions since then. I'm in a big place of neutrality. Like it doesn't bother me. So neutral.
Yeah. I love that word. And a lot of times people are like, oh, neutral's boring. But when it comes to trauma, really want to be able to think about things that have been traumatic in the past. But when we think about them, it's like there's no energetic charge to it.
Exactly.
And it just be a zero. You're like, oh yeah, that's something that happened. Oh yeah, that's somebody who at one point, like I was devastated over, and I can now look and say, oh, that's a person.
I literally every day think about how much I love my life. I love my life so much right now. I enjoy the simple things in life. Like, again, talking like the pandemic that we've worked over this. I was telling someone, I said, I have realized how much my alignment matters to me, that I no longer want to go do bullshit or interact with people that will cause me to feel out of alignment, that I'm totally content and happy to be at home. And I used to not be like that. So that's another element that felt weird, is it's like, am I becoming introverted? I'm not introverted, but I feel like I'm becoming introverted just because I'm so content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that you said the word, alignment, because that's everything that I'm so big on. I've changed my company name to Align with Abundance, right? Because everything is
great. Yeah.
like aligning, like when we align with what we desire, right? Whether it's success in business, whether it's having a romantic relationship, when we can align with that identity, everything flows and is easy. And abundance isn't necessarily like, oh, I have, a yacht and a mansion and 5 cars in my garage, right? Because for some of the people, that's not abundance. For some people, that's like, I want to be free and travel the world. And that's abundance, is to have the freedom to do that. So it's aligning with whatever is your abundance.
Yes.
And ultimately, abundance is being connected to yourself.
Yes.
Being connected to yourself, that you're not willing to tolerate BS anymore.
Yep.
I love that.
So, and I do want to talk about the money stuff, because however you want to go next, but so you did, I guess, if you want to talk about what the money thing we did together.
Which specifically you're talking about?
I call it the love languages of money.
Yeah. So the sacred money archetypes.
Sacred money archetypes. Yeah.
So so I remember our first conversation about your sacred money archetype. Okay? You are, and if anybody hasn't taken this quiz, I can link it down in the comments below later. But the sacred money archetypes is basically we have different ways that we interact with money. And when we're struggling in our relationship with money, it's typically because we're operating in our shadow side of it. Mm-hmm. So your top money archetype is the accumulator, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I found ironic, because I'm like, accumulate what?
Right. And that was the funny thing is Jody was like, well, like, that doesn't sound like me. Like, I don't have things accumulated, and you're frustrated in your relationship with money. And as we looked at it, it was like, well, that's where the frustration comes, is because at the core, you want to have, like, for you to feel safe, for you to feel good about it, to have stuff set aside. And you didn't. So then you're like, feeling stressed. But once you started leaning into it, it was like, oh, wait, that's what it does really feel good to me. So how can I make this happen in my life? That was, and I share that story oftentimes with people when they're like, oh, that one doesn't really sound like me, when they take the assessment. And I'm like, knowing them, I'm like,
is there a spender? No.
Yeah. So in what way did understanding your sacred money archetype and doing just this subconscious work help shift your relationship with money?
So probably right as we were wrapping up our year, I signed up for a cryptocurrency course and took a cryptocurrency course, which is probably jumping ahead, because I probably should set up some more basic stuff first. But for whatever reason, there was a woman that was teaching this class, and I like that where she was coming from was a more feminine energy place. Like, she doesn't like the toxic masculinity, the bro energy that sometimes it can be an investment. Yeah. And so her goal is to, like, teach more women how to invest and how to do things with money. So I've done that. And then just this week, I signed up for another course that is taught by somebody that is teaching more about stocks and long-term investment. Like, he's not a day trader. I mean, he looks at the stocks daily, but it's more for long-term investment. I'm sure he does some short-term stock stuff. Yeah. But what I love is I just kind of started browsing through the stuff that's in the Discord, which is like where people can talk and chat and stuff. And they do have a cryptocurrency layer in there. So I'm like, cool, this is going to give me a bigger platform, more people to, again, kind of like shift. Like, all right, so one of the steps you had me do back then was open up an investment account. Confession, I haven't done anything with that investment account, but I'm about to now. Like, now I'm going to shift it to this other class, and I'm going to start buying stocks and following this stuff. So, and I'm excited because I'm hoping that this will give me some knowledge so that I can help empower some other people in my life, whether it's my friends or my son or other people. Like, I want to help people learn from my mistakes and, do more of the long game. Yeah. So yeah, I'm like feeling really good about it and really amped about investing now.
Yeah. I love that, because it's like, once you realize, like, oh, this is your money archetype, and just admitting it to yourself, like, oh, I really do get excited when I, you know, have money saved, like, and lean into that. Like, that's what we can do, you know, and just be in the strengths of who we are.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I had another question and I lost my mind. I left my mind.
Investing, cryptocurrency, plants.
Yeah, plants. Lance. No, so the one of the things that we talked about too, or you wanted to work through, was like confidence, just confidence in being in your body. And I could say this is true for me and probably for most people over this past this course year. Like, most people didn't work out as much as they'd like. Some people probably went down some, you know, rabbit holes of eating habits. Like, our body shifted in one way or another, you know. And so, and then just the age that we're at, you know, there's all these like changes in the body, right?
Yes.
How is your relationship with your body? Well, how was it before? How is it now?
I would say, okay, so before, I guess, again, like, we started in the pandemic. I don't remember when it was exactly in that process that I told you I'm not a good journaler, but I do journal from time to time. And it can be very eye-opening because sometimes if you see the same pattern repeating or you're writing the same thing, you're like, all right, quit doing the same thing that you're bitching about, you know, like, change.
Right.
And I literally saw in my journal from whenever this was that I saw it, a year previous. And I was complaining about my weight. And that's when I had the realization. I was like, oh my God, I was 25 pounds lighter. And that was sometime last year when I discovered that. So I was like, oh, that's a wake up call. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't written it down. So to me, that was kind of a big deal. So you and I did work on, you know, again, like the energy work of that. So I can say, of course, I did some of the practical stuff to release some of the weight. And I don't remember, I'm probably down about 20 pounds. So not exactly back to where I was beforehand, but I'm more comfortable in my body now than I was then. Because I think all women get to a place of, you know, where you don't feel good, just certain clothes you put on. And a big part of it too is, I think, how people dress. Because I think certain things I just know I feel good in that. I don't feel good in this. So I think it's also getting some awareness around my wardrobe and just getting rid of stuff that I've put on 4 times and I've never worn, you know, like Marie Kondo, that stuff, like release it. So my girlfriends and I have been talking about having a night, you know, like, I'm going to take everything out of my closet, put every item on, and ditch what isn't staying and keep what's staying. Yeah. But you and I kind of joked about this because I said, you know, I'm actually really confident naked. Like, I'm okay being naked. It's when I start putting clothes on, I'm like, damn. Yeah. So, yeah, but I will say that I'm in a much better place. And plus, you and I did some work, like exercises in your book. And I just told a girlfriend about this recently. I'm like, thank your body for the things it does do. I can see, I can taste, I can smell, I can hear. I'm thankful I have toes so that I don't fall over. Because if we didn't have toes, we wouldn't be upright. You know, I'm thankful that my neck, you know, I can talk, I can sing. Well, sing. Well, I don't know about that, but you know, just all the different. When you start acknowledging your body for all the things it does, it's a really beautiful place. And I even joked with my friend. I was like, because she was like, "Oh, I just hate my stomach." I'm like, "You better love your stomach."
Right.
And I kind of joked. I was like, every time, yes, there's your book. Yeah. And I joke, and this may be too much information for some people, but I don't care. I was like, every time I use the restroom, I'm like, thank you, body, for doing what you're supposed to do. You know, thank you for these basic functions. I really appreciate you doing your job.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a minor thing. And I tell people, like, when I tell them about the book, I'm like, listen, it's really simple. Like, it's not like, if you're looking for some deep, like, crazy, you know, plan, like, it's not going to be there. I'm like, but the simplicity is where the changes happen. And most of us skip the simplicity.
Yeah.
And we have to stop skipping those simple things of just like, hey, like, oh yeah, like, because then it gives us space to be at that neutral, like, to then be like, okay, my body is this weight that I don't want it to be. What can I do to nurture my body differently? What can I do to move my body differently?
Yes.
Instead of like, oh, I'm just fat. Well, that just puts us in a deflated place of not being able to do anything.
Yes. And I feel like I've always been very conscious of language. So I usually will rarely say something like that. Like, it makes me nuts when people speak negatively about themselves. Like, you can say, I'm a little heavier than I'd like to be, but I hate it when people say I'm fat or I'm just this or that. Like, I don't like that.
Yeah. 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 So what would you say to someone who is like, okay, like I know I have some stuff that I really need to work through, should I hire a coach? Should I hire a therapist? Should I get energy work? Like, what would you say about like the work that we did and how it combines all things? And if like, they're like, oh, but I don't want to spend the money or, I don't have the money or, any of those, like, what would you say?
Yeah, okay. So again, because I've been on, I feel like a healing journey for years, like I've done cognitive behavioral therapy, which is regular counseling. I feel like that is slow and expensive. It can be helpful. I do actually recommend it if people don't have someone in their life. And maybe you can speak a little more to this at the end about what the overlap is between coaching and cognitive behavioral therapy. Um, uh, I know that there's EMDR, which is another thing that's really great modality out there in the world for people who have trauma that can deal with a trauma issue. But I feel like with coaching, the different element is with the regularity of it and the commitment of it. You're talking about things on a regular basis. And you and I had a very specific agenda. Typically, like you were like, okay, here's relational, self-love, health, business, finance. Like we had some different categories to work through. And having that long-term, knowing that we were going to be working together for 6 months to a year. Okay, well then, which one's our top priority? Because I know we're going to get to all of them. And those are all key areas of everyone's life. Like that's all major life elements. So I would say knowing that I had someone to talk to because like sometimes you do have those traumatic events or stuff pops up or challenges. So it's nice to know that, okay, I can get another perspective from somebody. And then the other element behind it, like, again, the reassurance or the thing that I liked is knowing that I was going to have energy work done on me. And it was very fascinating to, again, get your voice memos and hear the common things that came up because, and you and I have talked about this before, but like in the movie Inside Out, like, which is a Pixar movie about a little girl's brain, and it shows like her dominant emotions. Like there's joy, there's sadness, anger. What was the other one?
Disgust and
the worrier, anxious.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So I think one of the sad things I realized was like the person running my control board was sadness, like the blue girl. Yeah. So that was eye opening. But again, like I definitely, like I said, I have never felt as contented as I do right now. Just with the simplicity of life, of just, the day-to-day stuff. So I'm just enjoying my day-to-day life, honestly, and work and my family and my cats and my home, whatever.
Your plants.
My plants, which are my new babies. Yes, my new plants. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just leaning into what feels good, and not focusing on stuff that makes me miserable or unhappy. Like I'm just trying to do my best to stay in the feel good place, which I know, again, like I know life isn't all, glitter and rainbows 24/7, but, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Mm-hmm. So I like that I've learning to adapt and adjust to the pain so that I don't suffer.
Yeah. Yeah. And allowing yourself to receive things that you enjoy and to receive pleasure, right? Mm-hmm. In receiving them. And that's such a big thing. And we think that we have to have these big, crazy lives, for us to be successful, but gosh, how successful is it when you can be like, you know what? Like I do the things that I love, do it on my time, and I go with the flow of life and I plan things. Like there's the both and, right? But I don't let these things like knock me down, nor do I think that I'm, not good enough because I don't have this and this and this. It's like, no, this is my life. This is what I chose.
Yep.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing your experience. I super appreciate it because, as I said, I can say how great it is to work with me because I think that what I created is a really great program. And it's different. Like what I do with people is it's different for every person, but it's the same. Yeah. And we have the calls, we have the energy work, but everybody has different things that they're focusing on. But when we can release that foundational stuff so that you can then connect back to your heart, just these are the things that bring me joy, and I'm going to allow myself to have those things, like, gosh, like that's when the fun begins.
Agreed. Well, all right. And I do want you to talk about this because I've talked about you to so many people. How would you describe what you do versus like regular counseling?
Yeah.
And what are, because like I tell them, I'm like, she has a resume as long as my arm, like, so what are some of the things you've done in the past? Because if some of my friends or family watch this, I would like them to know your background.
Yeah. So I have a master's in counseling, and that for me was, I wanted to help people, and I just was like, I need skills. And I found quickly, my first job out of grad school was working as a therapist at a group home for adolescent girls. And so we're talking kids from the city. This is when I lived in, like, yeah, exactly. I was living in South Jersey at the time. So we had kids from Trenton, New York, Camden, Philly, rough places. And I found very quickly that those therapeutic tools, like, they weren't really helpful because kids were like, I don't want to talk about this stuff. It was like, there's got to be something else, right? And then also looking at their environment. I mean, they're in a group home and they're with staff people who are as equally as emotionally unintelligent as these kids were. So I am a very firm believer, and you can have the best therapist in the world, but if you have a horrible community, it's going to take a lot longer to get where you want. But if you have an amazing community and bad therapists, like, you're going to get further, right? Because having a great therapist is great, but if your community is not good, it can be challenging. So I left that world, had my own personal breakdown, which led me to health coaching. I became a health coach because I realized that, how much we eat contributes to how we feel, our mood. I have so many people that come to me and they're like, I'm sad, I'm depressed all the time. I'm like, okay, let's take a look at your diet. What are you feeding yourself? What's going on in your life? Right? And then they're like, oh, I never thought about that. Like, no one told me that sugar causes depression.
Right? Our cells are renewing every day. We're feeding it. This is the fuel we're feeding it.
Exactly. So I became a health coach and started doing that and looking at people from a holistic, perspective, right? Because it's never just one thing. So we look at the physical body, the emotional body, the energetic body, the mental body, the spiritual body, where, like, a lot of coaching, therapy is just like, let's look at the mind, right? And it really may be, you may be depressed because it was trauma in your past, right? And that trauma may be amplified because your diet is terrible, right? And sometimes it depends on the person, what we had to address first. For me personally, I had to address my food first before I could even get to my mindset. So I became a holistic health coach and then a natural food chef because I was the worst cook in the world, needed to learn how to eat. And then I really needed to go to culinary school to learn how to cook because I was that bad. And then from there, then I have so many certifications, master NLP practitioner, certified weight loss coach, like life coach. I worked as a coach for Tony Robbins' company for 3.5 years. So I've done the Robbins Madonna's training. I recently, this is just because I have the certificate right here, this money mindset business breakthrough coaching certification, the sacred Archetypes coach certification. And so the difference where I explain to people, like, therapy is typically stating your story and having somebody listen and be witness to your story.
Yeah.
We all need that. And we all need to feel that we're heard and we're seen.
Yeah.
Because that's what trauma is. Not what happens to you, it's what happens, like, what you do with it. And if we don't have someone to share it with and for it to be witnessed and to be, like, feel safe about it, like, it just keeps, like, building and building inside of us. And so that's typically therapy, is just having someone to talk through. Coaching is, and therapy is like, let's talk about the past. And my frustration with it was, we're going to talk about the past over and over and over again. It's like, but like, how is that helping, right? And coaching, typically, the typical coaching industry is, let's forget about your past and let's just focus on the future, right?
Yeah.
But that's like saying, hey, this foundation of this building is really crappy, but we're just going to, like, forget about that. And we're just going to keep building on top of it. You can't do that, right? Yeah. It's going to collapse. And so we have to address the foundation, and have to build. So sometimes you need somebody like a coach to be like, and I'm sure there's times that to you, I'm like, no, I'm not going to let you tell that story anymore.
Yeah.
And then there's other times where it's like, where clients will be like, well, no, I need to stop talking about this. And I'm like, no, actually, you need to talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right? There's a
balance. Yeah.
And then the energy work really bridges the gap, because for a lot of people, for everybody, right, as we said, is that the energy gets stuck in our bodies. right? The work isn't necessarily in our mind. It really is in our bodies. And so when we think about a traumatic situation, or even something that's like you said, like you think about money and all of a sudden you're like contracted, right? And it's like, we have this energy that's stuck inside of us. And then because it's stuck inside and we haven't moved it out, it just keeps attracting more and more and more of it. It's just like if you see like a dust bunny in the corner, why? Because at one spot you see no dust bunny, and one spot like you see a really big dust bunny. It's like dust keeps to the dust bunny that's already there, right? Because it's easier to go to something that's already there than to like just empty space.
Yeah.
And the energy work helps to move the stuff out of the body so that you can move forward from your past, right? You can be like, oh, wait a minute, this thing that was really traumatic, that was so hurtful, it's not anymore. I'm neutral about it.
Yeah.
And oh, so now what do we do to move forward, right? So having somebody that has like those 3 skills to like help you talk about it and witness your past, right? But then also to be able to say, here's what we need to do to move forward.
Yeah.
And then also help move it out. I mean, I don't know very many other coaches, who do that, because
I feel like it's very comprehensive, because you put in the time on the calls. And remind me, how long were the calls again?
Up to an hour.
Yeah, so we would do up to an hour call, which is to me huge, because a lot of coaching industry is like 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're also doing the behind the scenes work. You're doing work on, on your clients throughout the week.
Right.
And you're always also like, drink your water. Like, so there were so many layers. It was very difficult for me to explain. So I'm kind of glad that we've done this, because I'll just tell people like, go watch this video. Because there's layers to it. And I definitely have been giving you, credit this as I've been thinking about it this week, preparing again for this call. I was telling some of my girlfriends, I was like, oh, you know what? I noticed this about the AC thing, and I realized how quickly I bounced back. I was like, I credit that to my work with Heather because of this, and this, and just different aspects. I've just been thinking about, wow, I'm really happy. Like I'm in a very different place than I was even just a year ago. And I am kind of like just resting in my confidence of who I am professionally, who I am as a person, just all of those things. Like, I'm just very happy. I'm very happy.
Yay.
No more sadness.
Well, and the sadness isn't the problem either. Cause like in Inside Out, what I love the most, like Joy was always like, come on. And there's one scene like bingo. Was it bingo? Bingo. What was the imaginary friend, right?
The clown guy.
Yeah, and he's sitting down and he's sad, and Joy is like, come on, blah, blah, blah. And he just he wouldn't snap out of it. And Sadness comes along and puts her arm around, and it's like, I'm sorry, that must be really hard. And he's like, yeah, it is.
Mm.
He just put her head on his shoulder, and he cried a little bit, and then he's like, okay, I can do it now. Yeah. And Joy's like, wait a minute, what? Like, that's what you have to do?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this, is because sometimes my clients need me to come alongside them and to hug them, like virtually, hug them and be like, I hear you.
I just had a thought. Joy is the coaching industry, the normal coaching industry.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going forward.
Full speed, right? Oh, it's crazy.
No, I feel like there are a lot of beautiful layers to our work together, and I'm very thankful. So that's why I wanted to get on and do this, because I'm like, I can't write something to do justice to the work we did last year or in the last 12 months. So
awesome. And it's a great foundation. And then, you can work with other people and continue to build on other stuff. And I love that, because now you have that space cleared in your body of all the trauma and stuff gone, so that you're like, okay, I can do this now. I can be this.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. So I will, I'll link below this your socials if you want me to, so that anybody who is moving to Texas get
Yeah, I guess so. Put my Facebook. I'm on TikTok and Instagram.
You have to send me TikTok, because I don't, I'm not on TikTok, but Instagram. I have a TikTok account, but I've never done anything with it, because we'll get there one day. We'll get there.
I'll talk to you separately about the positives. I don't want everybody on there either. I like it the way it is right now.
Yeah. So thank you again. I really appreciate this, and just thank you for your trust in me and the work, and for just letting us have fun together with this.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and thank you, because again, it was a big transformational year. Oh, and you did mention if someone was nervous about the financial aspect of it, I would say that I feel like for me, definitely with the work we did, like the money came. Like the money will come, A, or B, what is it worth to you to have your health, your happiness, your wholeness? And like I said, regular therapy is slow and expensive, and you have to physically go see somebody. Like there's just so many elements
Yeah.
of it. To me, working with you is a bargain, considering everything you're getting. So
I know.
yes,
Yeah.
go
Awesome.
work with Heather.
Thank you. Please. I'd love to help y'all if you want some help. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up, and I'm gonna put the info where you can find Jody, and if you're moving or if you know someone who's moving, to the Georgetown, Texas area, greater area. It's not just
Yes.
there. She can hook you up. So.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you, Heather.
Yeah.